Betrayal cuts deeper when it comes from your own flesh and blood. Trust me when I say there's no wound that compares to watching your children become strangers who look down on the hands that once held them. I never thought I'd be sitting here, telling strangers on the internet about how my children tried to erase me from their lives, only to come crawling back when they realized what they'd done. But here I am. If you stay until the end, you'll understand why sometimes the most loving thing a mother can do is to let her children feel the full weight of their choices. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. I know I'm not the only mother who's been made to feel invisible. My name is Daisy Gagnon, and until last year, I was just another cleaning lady in Los Angeles. Invisible to most people, especially my own children. For 30 years, I've scrubbed toilets, polished silver, and vacuumed floors in homes worth more than I could earn in 10 lifetimes. I've cleaned up after people who couldn't be bothered to learn my name, even after I'd been working for them for years. But none of that ever bothered me the way my children's shame did. My ex-husband, Henry, left me for his 28-year-old secretary 15 years ago. Classic, right? He was a financial advisor with an office in Century City. I met him waiting tables when I was 19. He was my ticket out of waiting tables 6 nights a week while taking community college classes during the day. We were married within 6 months. I thought I'd won the lottery. Our son, Isaac, was born a year later, followed by our daughter, Matilda, 2 years after that. For almost 20 years, I was the perfect wife and mother. I hosted dinner parties for Henry's clients, volunteered at the kids' schools, and made sure our home ran like clockwork. I put everything, my education, my ambitions, my identity, on hold. I became Mrs. Henry Gagnon, and I was content with that. Stupid, perhaps, but content. When Henry left, he took everything. The house, the savings, the lifestyle. His lawyer was better than mine. Much better. The divorce settlement was brutal. Child support barely covered groceries, and alimony was a joke. I found myself, at 43, with no real work experience, no degree, and 2 teenagers who blamed me for their father's departure. If you hadn't let yourself go, Dad wouldn't have left, Matilda said to me once, during a particularly vicious argument when she was 17. I weighed the same as I did on my wedding day, but Henry had convinced her that I'd somehow failed as a wife, that I'd driven him away. I started cleaning houses because it was the only job I could get without a degree that paid enough to keep us in the school district. I worked for an agency at first, then built my own client list. For 15 years, I've cleaned the homes of the wealthy, including friends we used to socialize with when I was Mrs. Henry Gagnon. The same women who used to invite me to their charity luncheons now leave me lists of chores. Isaac and Matilda grew up and moved out. Isaac went to UCLA on a scholarship Henry's parents provided, then business school. Now he works at some tech startup in San Francisco, making more money than he knows what to do with. Matilda went to USC, then got her master's in marketing. She works for a luxury brand management company. Both of them married well. Both of them visit rarely. Both of them call only when they need something. I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment in Glendale. It's clean and neat, with furniture I've collected over the years from estate sales and thrift stores. I have a small balcony where I grow herbs and read books borrowed from the library. It's not much, but it's mine. At 58, I've made peace with my life. Or so I thought. Last month I got a text from Isaac. Not a call, a text. "Mom, I'm hosting a dinner party for my birthday next weekend. Can you come? Saturday at 7. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Isaac hadn't invited me to anything in years. His birthday celebrations usually involved trips to Cabo or Aspen with his wife, Amber, and their friends. Destinations far beyond my budget. I always sent a card with whatever I could afford tucked inside. He never acknowledged them. I texted back immediately. "I'd love to. What should I bring?" "Just yourself. Address is 1224 Mulholland Drive." Mulholland Drive. Of course. Isaac and Amber had recently purchased a home in the Hollywood Hills. I'd never seen it, only glimpsed it in pictures on Instagram. An ultra-modern glass and concrete structure with views of the entire city. The kind of house I might have cleaned but never lived in. I spent the week anxious about what to wear, what to say, how to act. I settled on a simple black dress I'd bought years ago for a client's funeral. It was the nicest thing I owned. I splurged on having my hair done. Nothing fancy, just a trim and style at a salon in the mall. I even bought a small gift, a vintage silver frame with a photo of Isaac as a child, playing at the beach. His happiest moment, I always thought. Saturday arrived, and I took the bus as close as I could get, then called a Lyft for the rest of the journey. The driver looked at me skeptically as we wound our way up the hills. "Big party?" he asked, clearly wondering what someone like me was doing in this neighborhood. "My son's birthday," I replied, trying to keep the pride from my voice. "He lives here." The house was even more impressive in person. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a circular driveway filled with luxury cars, a security gate that required me to speak into an intercom. I clutched my purse and gift bag as I approached the front door. The door opened before I could knock. Isaac stood there, tall and handsome in a tailored navy suit. So much like his father, it made my heart ache. "Mom?" he said, his voice neutral. "You made it." I stepped forward to hug him, but he moved back, gesturing me inside. "Everyone's out by the pool." "Everyone?" I asked, feeling suddenly underdressed and underprepared. "Just a few friends from work, Amber's sisters and Dad and Natalie." My heart sank. Henry and his wife. I hadn't seen them in years, not since Matilda's wedding, where they'd been seated at the head table while I was placed with distant cousins near the kitchen. "Oh, that's nice," I managed. "I didn't realize they'd be here." Isaac shrugged. "Dad helped with the down payment on the house. He wanted to see it." Of course he did. Henry had always been generous with the children, buying their love with expensive gifts and opportunities while I struggled to keep them fed and clothed. In their eyes, he was the hero who provided, while I was just there, the constant reminder of a life they'd rather forget. I followed Isaac through the house, past minimalist furniture that probably cost more than my car, past abstract art on walls that soared 20 feet high. We stepped out onto a terrace that wrapped around an infinity pool, the city sprawling below us like a glittering carpet. About 20 people stood in small groups, champagne flutes in hand. I recognized Henry immediately. Still handsome at 63, silver hair making him look distinguished rather than old. Beside him stood Natalie, his wife of 15 years. She was beautiful, of course. Blonde, fit, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Amber, Isaac's wife, was holding court near the pool. She spotted me and waved, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "Daisy, what a surprise." A surprise? Had Isaac not told them I was coming? "Amber," I said, kissing her cheek. "Happy birthday, Isaac." I handed him the gift. "Thanks, Mom," he said, setting it aside without opening it. He seemed distracted, looking over my shoulder. "Let me get you a drink." He disappeared into the house, leaving me standing awkwardly alone. I scanned the crowd, hoping to see Matilda, but she wasn't there. I hadn't seen my daughter in almost 6 months. She'd canceled our last 3 lunch dates, always with a legitimate excuse. Work emergencies. Her husband Jacob's family obligations. A sudden cold. I felt a presence beside me and turned to find Henry. "Daisy," he said, his voice the same smooth baritone that had once made my knees weak. "You look, well." "Henry." I nodded. "So do you." Natalie appeared at his side, wrapping her arm possessively around his waist. "Daisy," she said, her tone faux friendly. "How's work? Still with the cleaning company?" Before I could answer, Isaac returned with a glass of white wine. "Here, Mom." "Thank you," I said, taking a sip to hide my discomfort. "Is Matilda coming?" Isaac's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. "She and Jacob are in Paris this week, Fashion Week, her company center." "Oh," I said, feeling the familiar sting of exclusion. Matilda hadn't mentioned any trip to Paris when she'd canceled our lunch last week. That's wonderful for her. An awkward silence fell. I searched for something to say, anything to break the tension. "The house is beautiful, Isaac. You must be so proud." "It's a good investment," Henry interjected. "Property in this area appreciates quickly. I've been telling him to buy up here for years." "I love the view," I said, determined to keep the conversation going. "It's spectacular at sunset," Natalie added, We were just saying we should get a place up here ourselves. For weekends. As if the Malibu beach house wasn't enough. I sipped my wine, trying to ignore the knot forming in my stomach. I should never have come. I didn't belong here, among these people with their casual references to million-dollar real estate and impromptu trips to Paris. I was the cleaning lady, the ex-wife, the obligation. Isaac, a man's voice called from across the terrace. Come settle a bet. Isaac looked relieved at the interruption. Excuse me, he said, already moving away. Make yourself comfortable, Mom. Food's inside if you're hungry. I watched him walk away, leaving me with Henry and Natalie. They exchanged glances. Then Henry muttered something about needing to speak with someone, and they, too, drifted off, leaving me alone. I stood there, clutching my wine glass, feeling every bit the imposter. In my sensible shoes and mall-styled hair, I might as well have been wearing my cleaning uniform with Daisy's cleaning service embroidered on the pocket. I made my way to the edge of the terrace, looking out at the view. It was beautiful, the city lights beginning to twinkle as dusk settled. I found myself wondering how many of those lights belonged to homes I'd cleaned, how many toilets I'd scrubbed, how many floors I'd polished, how many shelves I'd dusted. I wondered if anyone here knew what my hands looked like up close. The calluses, the perpetually dry skin from years of harsh chemicals, the slightly bent index finger from when I'd broken it falling off a step stool at Mrs. Abernathy's house and hadn't been able to afford to take the day off to go to the doctor. These were the hands that had cradled Isaac when he was born, that had wiped Matilda's tears when she'd fallen off her bike, that had packed their lunches and hemmed their clothes and stroked their foreheads when they were sick. These were the hands they were ashamed of. I stood alone on that terrace for what felt like hours, watching as Isaac circulated among his guests. Not once did he look in my direction or attempt to include me in any conversation. I was a prop in his life, the dutiful mother who had shown up to play her part before being conveniently forgotten. The sun had almost set when I decided I needed a moment to compose myself. I slipped inside, searching for a bathroom where I could have a moment of privacy. The house was a maze of sleek corridors and open spaces. I found myself in what appeared to be Isaac's home office, a minimalist space with a glass desk, a leather chair, and floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with business books and expensive-looking art pieces. I was about to leave when I noticed a framed photo on the desk. I picked it up, expecting, hoping, to see a family photo. Perhaps the beach picture I had just given him, already displayed. Instead, I found myself staring at a picture of Isaac, Matilda, Henry, and Natalie, posed in front of a Christmas tree. A perfect family portrait. Without me. My hands trembled as I set the frame back down. The message couldn't have been clearer if they'd written it out. I was not part of the family they wanted to remember. I heard voices approaching and quickly stepped back into the hallway, nearly colliding with a group of young men. Isaac's friends, I assumed. Sorry, I murmured, trying to step around them. No problem, one of them said, then turned to Isaac, who had just joined them. Is this your mom? The one you were telling us about? Isaac's face tightened. Yeah, this is my mother, Daisy. I extended my hand. Nice to meet you. The young man shook it, his grip a little too firm, his smile a little too practiced. Isaac's told us a lot about you. Has he? I asked, genuinely surprised. All about your cleaning business. Another one chimed in. Very entrepreneurial. Isaac shifted uncomfortably. Mom's been at it for years. What's it like? The first one asked me, his tone making it clear he thought he was being polite by showing interest. Cleaning for the rich and famous? Before I could answer, Isaac cut in. Mom doesn't clean for celebrities or anything, just regular houses. Actually, I said, finding my voice, many of my clients are quite well known. I've been in more Hollywood homes than most studio executives. It wasn't exactly true, but I didn't appreciate being diminished. Mom, Isaac said, his voice carrying a warning. Don't exaggerate. I'm not, I replied, maintaining my dignity. I've built a successful business that supports me comfortably. Another stretching of the truth. I got by, but comfortable was generous. Isaac's friend looked between us, sensing tension. Well, that's cool. My mom's an accountant. Boring as hell. He laughed, trying to lighten the mood. There's nothing boring about honest work, I said firmly. Mom cleans because she never finished college, Isaac said, his voice low but clear enough for his friends to hear. She doesn't have many options. The sting of his words took my breath away. It was as if he had slapped me across the face in front of everyone. I clean, I said carefully, because when your father left us with nothing, I had to find a way to keep you and your sister in the lifestyle you were accustomed to. I clean because it allowed me to be present for you when you needed me. I clean because it's honest work that I do exceptionally well. Isaac's friends looked uncomfortable now, shifting their weight and avoiding eye contact. Can we not do this now? Isaac hissed. It's my birthday. Yes, it is, I agreed. And I've been made to feel unwelcome from the moment I arrived. That's not true, he protested, but his eyes darted around, checking to see who might be listening. When was the last time you invited me anywhere, Isaac? When was the last time you or Matilda called just to check on me? We're busy, Mom. We have careers, responsibilities. And I don't? My voice rose slightly despite my effort to remain calm. I work 6 days a week. I have responsibilities. Isaac glanced nervously at his friends, then back at me. It's different. How? I challenged. He hesitated. Then the words tumbled out, loud enough for his friends to hear. You're just ordinary, Mom. You clean other people's houses. Dad's new wife just bought a vacation home in Malibu. There it was. The truth I'd always known, but had never heard spoken aloud. I was ordinary. I was an embarrassment. I was less than. I looked at my son, this stranger in expensive clothes who had my chin and his father's eyes, and felt something break inside me. Not my heart. Something harder, more fundamental. The last thread of illusion that had kept me tethered to the belief that I still mattered to my children. I smiled, said nothing, and quietly gathered my purse from where I'd set it down. I walked past Isaac and his friends, past Henry and Natalie deep in conversation with another couple, past Amber holding court by the pool. No one tried to stop me. No one even noticed I was leaving. I called a lift from the sidewalk outside Isaac's security gate. As I waited, I looked back at the glass house perched on the hillside like a crown jewel. All those windows, all that light, all that emptiness. The lift arrived, and I climbed in, giving the driver my address in Glendale. My phone buzzed with a text as we pulled away. Mom, where did you go? Isaac. I didn't respond. Another buzz. Are you coming back? People are asking about you. A lie. I turned my phone off. At home, I kicked off my sensible shoes and poured myself a glass of wine. I sat on my small balcony among my herbs, looking out at the distant lights of Los Angeles. My city, too, just viewed from a different angle. I thought about Isaac's words. Ordinary. As if it were a sin to be common, to work with your hands, to live a life without glamour. As if the only value a person had was in their possessions, their address, their job title. And then I thought about what Isaac didn't know, what neither of my children knew, the secret I'd kept for 15 years, ever since Henry had left me with nothing but my dignity. I turned my phone back on. 25 missed calls from Isaac, 10 from unknown numbers. His friends, perhaps? A few texts from Matilda, who must have heard something had happened. I ignored them all and made a different call, to a number I'd memorized but never used. Mr. Worthington? I said when a gruff voice answered. This is Daisy Gagnon. I think it's time we had that conversation you've been wanting to have. I hung up and looked out at the city again. Sometimes silence speaks louder than words. And sometimes, after 15 years of silence, it's time to speak. Loud and clear. Mr. Worthington's downtown office smelled of leather and money. I sat across from him in a chair that probably cost more than everything in my apartment combined. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, Los Angeles sprawled like a glittering tapestry. I'd cleaned penthouses with views like this, but I'd never sat across from someone like Lawrence Worthington as an equal. Mrs. Gagnon, he said, folding his hands on his immaculate desk. I must say I was surprised to get your call. After our previous conversations over the years, I'd assumed you'd made your final decision. I had, I replied, my voice steadier than I expected. Things change. Lawrence Worthington was Henry's former business partner. They'd built Gagnon Worthington Financial together during the early years of my marriage. When Henry left me 15 years ago, Worthington had reached out, quietly, discreetly. He'd had a proposition, one that I'd rejected immediately and continued to reject each time he'd approached me over the years. Until now. May I ask what changed? Worthington was in his late 60s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed. I'd met him dozens of times at company functions when I was still Mrs. Henry Gagnon. Back then, he'd barely acknowledged me. Now, he watched me with undisguised curiosity. "My children," I said simply. He nodded as if he understood completely. Perhaps he did. "I've kept everything in order," he said, opening a drawer and removing a thick folder. "The documentation is all here. As I explained in our previous discussions, Henry never knew about the offshore accounts. The money he funneled through them is still there, growing. And with the statute of limitations expired on the tax fraud, the only person who can touch that money now is you." Out I took the folder but didn't open it. I knew what was inside. Proof that my ex-husband had embezzled millions from his clients and hidden it offshore. Proof that had been in Worthington's possession all these years. Proof that Henry had sacrificed me to protect. "Remind me why you're doing this," I said, genuinely curious. "Why did you want me to have this information?" Worthington's smile was tight. "Henry sacrificed me too, Daisy. When the SEC started investigating, he made sure all roads led to me. I lost my license, my reputation. I had to settle out of court for everything I had. Meanwhile, Henry walked away clean, with a slap on the wrist and a small fine. He threw me under the bus, just like he threw you away. But you recovered," I observed, gesturing to the opulent office. "I had other resources," he acknowledged, "and I rebuilt. But I never forgot what he did. And when I discovered these accounts 3 years after our fall, I knew exactly what had happened. And you came to me. You were his wife when he set them up. Half of that money is legally yours, and turning him in would destroy everything he's built since then." I nodded, finally opening the folder. The documents inside were overwhelming. Account numbers, transaction histories, offshore company names. But the bottom line was clear. Henry had hidden away just over $7 million. Money stolen from clients. Money that should have been part of our divorce settlement. Money he'd kept secret while I scrubbed toilets to pay rent. "And you're sure about the statute of limitations?" I asked. "On the tax fraud? Yes. The SEC can't touch him now. But the divorce fraud, hiding assets during your settlement, that's a different matter. Especially in California. And then there's the court of public opinion." Worthington's smile turned predatory. His current clients wouldn't be happy to learn about his history. I closed the folder. "Thank you for keeping this for me all these years. Does this mean you're finally going to use it?" I stood up, clutching the folder to my chest. "I'm going to do what I should have done 15 years ago." My apartment felt different when I returned. Smaller, shabbier, more temporary. I'd lived there for 15 years, but suddenly it felt like a waiting room I'd been sitting in while my real life was on hold. I spread the documents across my small dining table, organizing them chronologically. The earliest dated back to the year before Henry left me. The most recent was from just 2 years ago. He was still using the accounts, still hiding money. My phone rang. Matilda. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again almost immediately. Isaac this time. I turned it off. My children had made their choices. Now I was making mine. I spent the night formulating my plan. By morning, I knew exactly what I needed to do. I called in sick to my cleaning jobs for the week, something I'd never done before, and got to work. First, I visited a lawyer. Not the overworked public defender type I'd used during my divorce, but a shark in an expensive suit whose office occupied the top floor of a Century City high-rise. I paid his consultation fee in cash and laid out the documents Worthington had given me. "Mrs. Gagnon," he said after an hour of reviewing the materials, "you have a very strong case for divorce fraud. We can file motions to reopen the settlement immediately. With these offshore accounts now discovered, you could be entitled to half of those assets plus penalties. And if I wanted to pursue other avenues as well?" I asked carefully. His eyebrow raised slightly. "Such as?" I want everything that's legally mine, but I also want Henry to face consequences. The lawyer leaned back in his chair. There are several approaches we could take. Legal remedies are one path, public disclosure is another. Both have their advantages and disadvantages. I want both, I said firmly. I want what's mine, and I want Henry exposed for what he is. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. We can begin proceedings immediately. I would suggest, however, that you prepare yourself. This will not be a quick or easy process. Mr. Gagnon will fight back. It could get ugly. I've been cleaning other people's messes for 15 years, I replied. I'm not afraid of ugly. My next stop was a small cafe in Venice Beach. The woman who waited for me there looked out of place among the bohemian crowd with her crisp pantsuit and perfectly styled hair. Jessica Kwan was an investigative reporter for the Los Angeles Times, specializing in white-collar crime. Worthington had provided her name, saying she'd been looking into Henry years ago before the story was mysteriously killed. Mrs. Gagnon, she said, shaking my hand firmly. I've been hoping to meet you for a long time. I slid a copy of the documentation across the table to her. I believe you were working on a story about my ex-husband some years ago. Jessica didn't touch the folder, but her eyes locked onto it. I was, until my editor told me to drop it. Apparently, Mr. Gagnon had powerful friends. He still does, I acknowledged. But perhaps not for long. She finally pulled the folder closer, opening it carefully as if it might contain explosives. In a way, it did. Why now? She asked, her eyes scanning the documents. These accounts have existed for years. Worthington told me you've known about them for almost as long. Let's just say I recently realized that family loyalty isn't always reciprocated. Jessica nodded, continuing to flip through the papers. This is explosive stuff, Mrs. Gagnon. If I can verify it independently, and I will need to do that, this could be a major story. How long would that take? To do it right? A few weeks at least? I need to trace these accounts, confirm the transactions, get comments from all parties involved, including Henry. Eventually, yes, but not until we're ready to publish. I nodded, satisfied. Then I'll leave you to it. As I stood to leave, Jessica caught my arm. Mrs. Gagnon, you should know. If this story breaks, it won't just affect your ex-husband. His current business, his reputation, his family, everyone in his orbit will feel the impact. I thought of Natalie in her red dress, of Isaac's glass house on the hill, of Matilda's trips to Paris. I thought of the family photo that didn't include me. I'm counting on it, I said, and walked away. When I turned my phone back on that evening, I had 47 missed calls and over 60 text messages. Most were from Isaac and Matilda, growing increasingly frantic. The most recent ones suggested they were considering filing a missing person report if I didn't respond. I sent them each the same message. I'm fine. I need some time alone. Please respect that. Then I turned my phone off again and went to bed. For the first time in 15 years, I slept without dreaming of what might have been. Instead, I dreamed of what was about to come. For 3 days, I disappeared from my children's lives the way they had disappeared from mine so many times before. I didn't answer calls. I didn't respond to increasingly desperate texts. I simply vanished. On the 4th day, I found Matilda waiting outside my apartment when I returned from a meeting with my new lawyer. Mom! She rushed toward me, her designer handbag swinging wildly from her arm. Where have you been? We've been worried sick. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, for the first time in years. Matilda had always favored Henry, with her sharp features and calculating eyes. Today, she looked frazzled, her normally perfect hair slightly disheveled, dark circles under her eyes. I've been taking care of some personal business, I replied, unlocking my door without inviting her in. She followed anyway. Personal business? You disappeared. Isaac said you left his party without saying goodbye, and then you wouldn't answer any of our calls. She stood in the center of my small living room, looking around as if she'd never seen it before. In truth, she rarely visited. We thought something happened to you. Something did happen to me, I said calmly, setting down my purse and the folder of legal documents. I finally opened my eyes. Matilda frowned. What are you talking about? Is this about what Isaac said? He feels terrible about it. He didn't mean... He meant every word, I interrupted. And so have you in your own way, for years. That's not fair, Mom. Isn't it? When was the last time you called me just to check how I was doing? Not to cancel plans or make excuses, but to genuinely ask about my life? Matilda's mouth opened, then closed. She couldn't remember, and neither could I. Look, we've all been busy. I know I haven't been the most attentive daughter, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Love without respect isn't love, Matilda. It's obligation. She sank onto my sofa, suddenly looking very young. What's happening? Why are you acting like this? Like what? Like a person with self-respect? Like someone who's tired of being the family embarrassment? Nobody thinks you're an embarrassment, she protested weakly. Isaac does, I said. And so do you. I'm the cleaning lady. The cautionary tale. The reason you work so hard at your marriage. So you don't end up like me. Tears filled Matilda's eyes. That's not true. You told your friend Stephanie that very thing at your wedding. I overheard you in the bathroom. I'm never going to end up desperate and alone like my mom, you said. That's why I made sure to marry someone successful. The color drained from her face. Mom, I was drunk. I didn't mean... Again, you meant every word. I moved to my kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, not offering her one. The problem isn't that you think those things, Matilda. The problem is that you've never taken a moment to consider why my life turned out this way. I know why. Dad left and... Your father left because he had someone younger waiting in the wings. Yes, but that's not why I ended up cleaning houses. I took a deliberate sip of water. I ended up cleaning houses because your father stole our future and gave it to Natalie. What are you talking about? I gestured to the folder on my coffee table. Your father committed fraud during our divorce. He hid assets, millions in offshore accounts, money that should have been part of our settlement, money that would have changed the course of my life completely. Matilda stared at the folder, but didn't reach for it. That's not possible. Dad wouldn't. He did. And I've known about it for nearly 15 years. Her head snapped up. You've known? And you did nothing? I did nothing to protect you and Isaac, I said flatly. I was afraid of what would happen to your relationship with your father if the truth came out. I was afraid of how it might hurt your futures if your father went to prison for fraud. Prison? She whispered. Yes, prison. Where criminals belong. Matilda was shaking her head now, as if she could physically reject what I was telling her. If you've known for 15 years, why are you bringing this up now? Because I finally realized that my sacrifice was wasted. You and Isaac have made it abundantly clear that you've chosen your father's values. Money, status, appearances. So be it. But now you get to live with the consequences of those choices. What does that mean? Fear crept into her voice. It means I've hired a lawyer to reopen the divorce settlement. It means an investigative reporter is digging into your father's financial history as we speak. It means the comfortable life you've built is about to come crashing down around you. Matilda surged to her feet. You can't do that. Do you know what it would do to Dad? To all of us? I'm counting on it, I said, echoing my words to the reporter. This is insane. You're angry about something Isaac said at a party, so you're going to destroy our family? Your father destroyed our family 15 years ago, I corrected her. I'm simply bringing the truth to light. The truth? She sputtered. The truth is you're bitter and resentful because your life didn't turn out the way you wanted, so you're taking it out on everyone else. I set down my glass with careful precision. The truth, Matilda, is that I worked my fingers to the bone so you and Isaac could have the opportunities I never had. I cleaned other people's toilets so you could go to USC. I sacrificed everything. My education, my career prospects, my dignity, for you, children. And how have you repaid me? With shame, with embarrassment, with the occasional obligatory lunch that you cancel at the last minute. That's not fair, she repeated. But her voice lacked conviction. Life isn't fair, but consequences are. I moved to the door and opened it. I have another appointment, so I'm afraid you'll have to leave. Matilda didn't move. Mom, please, think about what you're doing. Think about Isaac and me. I have thought about you. For 30 years, Every decision I've made has been with you and Isaac in mind. Now I'm making decisions for myself. Is that what this is about? Getting back at Dad? At us? This is about justice, Matilda. Something long overdue. She grabbed her purse, tears streaming down her face now. You'll regret this. When everything falls apart and we all hate you, you'll regret it. I met her gaze steadily. No, I won't. As she brushed past me, I added, Tell your brother not to bother coming. My decision is made. After she left, I sat in my quiet apartment, waiting for the wave of guilt or doubt to hit me. It never came. Instead, I felt a strange sense of lightness, as if a burden I'd carried for decades had finally been lifted. My phone rang. Isaac. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to his message. Mom, what the hell? Matilda just called me crying. What did you say to her? What's this about Dad and fraud? Look, I know what I said at the party was wrong. I was showing off for my friends and I hurt you. I'm sorry. But this is nuclear. Call me back. We need to talk. I deleted the message without responding. An hour later, my lawyer called with news. The motion to reopen the divorce settlement had been filed. Henry would be served papers tomorrow. The wheels were in motion. After 15 years of silence, of putting my children first, of sacrificing my own justice for their peace of mind, I was finally speaking up, and my voice would be heard. That night, I pulled out an old photo album, one of the few possessions I'd managed to keep after the divorce. I flipped through pictures of Isaac and Matilda as children, their first steps, school plays, soccer games, all the moments I'd been there for, all the love I'd poured into them. Had it all been wasted? Perhaps. But it didn't matter now. The time for motherly sacrifice was over. The time for justice had begun. I closed the album and put it back on the shelf. I wouldn't be needing it anymore. The Los Angeles Times ran the story on a Sunday. Financial advisors hidden millions, fraud, divorce, and offshore accounts. Jessica Kwan's byline. Henry's name in the headline. My name in the third paragraph. Daisy Gagnon, his ex-wife of 15 years, provided documentation showing that Henry Gagnon hid over $7 million in offshore accounts during their divorce proceedings. I sat at my small dining table, drinking coffee and reading every word carefully. Jessica had done a thorough job. The article detailed not just the fraud during our divorce, but connected it to the earlier SEC investigation that had resulted in Worthington taking the fall. She'd found former clients who suspected they'd been defrauded, but couldn't prove it. She'd uncovered a pattern of financial manipulation that spanned decades, and she'd gotten a quote from Henry. These allegations are completely baseless. My ex-wife is a disturbed woman seeking revenge for imagined slights. I almost laughed at that. Imagined slights. As if 15 years of struggle while he lived in luxury was something I'd made up in my head. My phone had been ringing constantly since the article went live at 6 a.m. Henry, Isaac, Matilda, even Natalie had called once. I let them all go to voicemail. At precisely 10 a.m., my lawyer called. I answered on the first ring. Mrs. Gagnon, I assume you've seen the article? Every word. Mr. Gagnon attorney has reached out. They want to discuss a settlement. I smiled to myself. Already? The article has only been online for 4 hours. Apparently, some of Mr. Gagnon's current clients have already called him, demanding explanations. His firm's reputation is taking a hit. What are they offering? $3 million. Half of the documented offshore funds. They're claiming the rest doesn't exist anymore. Not acceptable, I said firmly. I want half of everything. The documented funds, plus half the value of all assets acquired since our divorce. The house in Bel Air, the Malibu vacation home, his stake in the investment firm, everything. There was a pause. Then my lawyer said, That's an aggressive position, Mrs. Gagnon. He stole 15 years of my life, I replied. I'm simply collecting what's due. I'll convey your terms, but prepare yourself. This could turn into a protracted legal battle. I'm prepared, I assured him. And I have time. After hanging up, I finally checked my voicemails. Henry's was predictably furious, threatening lawsuits for defamation, promising to destroy whatever reputation you have left. Isaac's was different. His voice was tight, controlled. "Mom, my boss called me this morning. They're reconsidering my position because of the publicity. Do you understand what you've done? You've put my entire career at risk. Call me back." Matilda's was tearful. "Mom, Jacob's parents saw the article. They're suggesting we postpone the baby shower next month. They don't want their family associated with this scandal. Please, can't we talk about this? It's affecting everyone." I deleted them all without responding. Instead, I got dressed in a simple black dress. Not my cleaning uniform, but a dress I'd purchased with my first legal retainer check. The first of many new things in my new life. At noon, the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I had a feeling I knew who it might be. Henry stood in the hallway, looking both furious and somehow diminished. His expensive suit couldn't hide the fact that he'd aged overnight. The confident set of his shoulders was gone. "Daisy," he said, his voice tight. "We need to talk." "Do we?" I made no move to invite him in. "What the hell do you think you're doing? That article is full of lies and half-truths. You've damaged my reputation, my business." "Your reputation?" I interrupted. "Your business? What about my life, Henry? The one you stole when you hid those millions during our divorce?" His eyes narrowed. "You can't prove any of that. The documentation speaks for itself, and I believe the SEC might be interested in reopening their investigation now that new evidence has come to light." The color drained from his face. "You wouldn't." "I already have," I said calmly. "My lawyer filed a complaint this morning." Henry pushed past me into the apartment. I let him, curious to see what he would do. He stood in the center of my living room, looking around with contempt. "This is what this is about, isn't it? You're jealous. You've spent 15 years cleaning houses while I built something real. While Natalie and I traveled the world. While the kids succeeded. You're bitter and alone, and you want to drag everyone down with you." I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Is that what you think? That I'm jealous? What else could it be? You've always been small-minded, Daisy. Always focused on the wrong things. That's why I left. You left because Natalie was 28 and willing to look the other way when you committed fraud," I corrected him. "You left because staying married to me meant you'd have to share those millions you'd hidden away. I left because you were suffocating me," he snapped. "Always the perfect wife, the perfect mother. Never a thought in your head that wasn't about me or the kids. And that deserved punishment? It deserved escape." We stared at each other across the room. 15 years of unspoken truths hanging between us. "The kids called me," Henry finally said. "They're devastated. Isaac might lose his job. Matilda's in-laws are treating her like she's tainted. Is that what you wanted? To hurt your own children?" "Our children," I corrected, "made their choices long ago. They chose status over integrity, money over loyalty, your values over mine. So this is punishment? For them too?" "This is consequences," I said. "Something you've spent your life avoiding." Henry ran a hand through his silver hair, his confidence giving way to desperation. "What do you want, Daisy? Money? Is that it? Name your price, and we can make this all go away." I laughed, the sound sharp in the quiet room. "My price? Henry, you couldn't afford my price. Not anymore." "Try me," he challenged. "Whatever Worthington is paying you to do this, I'll double it." "Worthington isn't paying me anything. He merely provided information I should have had 15 years ago. Then what? What will it take to end this?" I straightened, meeting his gaze directly. "Justice," I said simply. "Complete and uncompromising justice. You'll destroy everything. The kids' lives, their futures." "No, Henry. You destroyed those things when you decided to commit fraud. When you taught our children that money and status were more important than honesty and respect. I'm merely bringing the truth to light." He stared at me for a long moment, then shook his head. "I don't recognize you anymore." "Good," I replied. "The woman you knew is gone. She died the day Isaac called her ordinary for working honest work. The woman standing before you now isn't interested in your recognition, only in your reckoning." Henry's phone rang. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. "This isn't over," he said, moving toward the door. "You're right. I agreed. It's just beginning. After he left, I sat on my balcony, watching the afternoon light fade over Los Angeles. My phone continued to ring intermittently. I continued to ignore it. A text came through from Matilda. "Mom, please, we need to talk. Family shouldn't do this to each other." I typed a response, my first in days. "We stopped being a family the day you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of it." Then I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and looked out at the city spread before me. Somewhere out there, Henry was scrambling to save his reputation. Isaac was wondering if he'd have a job tomorrow. Matilda was explaining to her in-laws that her mother wasn't the villain they thought she was. But here, in this moment, I was at peace. For the first time in 15 years, I had stopped cleaning up other people's messes and started addressing my own. Justice was coming. Slow, cold, and without mercy. Just as it should be.